Have we ever talked about the Bondo ape?
Yes, you have. Yeah, I know you like the
Yeah.
Bondo ape a lot. Yeah. Big lion-killing ape.
Do you know about the giant chimps that they found in the Congo? Do you know about this?
Let's check them out.
There's a group of chimps that they found in the Congo that are a subspecies.
Let's check them out.
They have it's they're called the Bondo ape.
Just picture yourself coming face to face with the monster that is so enormous that it causes you to lose the ability to communicate. Such is the reputation of the enormous chimpanzee that is native to the Congo. However, it is not the only one. It is said that there is a whole population of these chimps that are taking over the forests, and some people even claim that they are capable of eating lions.
A larger version of the chimpanzee. It's like 6 feet tall,
Oh.
huge, 200+ pound chimps.
Jeez.
Yeah, the locals call them lion killers.
It is as if it were completely unreal. One of the most common descriptions of the Bondo ape, also known as the billy ape, is that it is a large bipedal primate that appears to straddle the line between human and gorilla. Several cryptids, such as Bigfoot and the Yeti, have been compared to this peculiar creature due to its appearance. Do you have any knowledge of the enormous chimpanzees that were discovered in the Congo?
That's a larger version of the chimpanzee. It's like 6 feet tall,
Oh.
huge, 200+ pound chimps.
Jeez.
Yeah, the locals call them lion killers.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo region known as Bondo is where numerous sightings have been documented. Billy mentions a location in that region that is known for its dense, largely unexplored forests. The belief in folklore and anecdotal accounts that billy apes were strong and fierce enough to fight off lions has given them an air of superior strength and aggression when compared to other primates. For centuries, the Congo Basin has been home to legends concerning these enormous primates, handed down through the generations by nearby communities and indigenous tribes. The intriguing prospect of finding a new primate species drew explorers and cryptozoologists to the West, where interest in billy apes blossomed in the 20th and early 21st centuries. It turns out that images, videos, and hair samples of real skulls exist to confirm their existence. Not only is it a myth, these are real creatures. Some accounts even mention them devouring leopards, which is incredible. In the early 1900s, someone took pictures of one of these massive chimpanzees, and the images are very striking because, for the longest time, their existence had been questioned, in part because of how they were portrayed in Michael Crichton's book Congo and the ensuing film. But the apes are real, and they serve as a prime illustration of how myths can occasionally have a basis in reality. What makes them so bizarre, you ask? Well, in 1908, some gorilla skulls were discovered by explorers near the town of Billy. Upon noticing something strange about the skulls, they promptly sent them to Belgium. Fast forward to 1927, and these skulls helped identify a new subspecies of gorilla. This classification, however, was short-lived because Colin Groves re-examined the skulls in 1970 and came to the conclusion that they were identical to those of Western gorillas. As we previously mentioned, in 1996, a Swiss-Kenyan photographer who was a strong opponent of the bushmeat trade traveled to Billy in search of the elusive gorillas and instead reported seeing live sightings. He was left with an odd-looking skull. It had a prominent sagittal crest similar to that of a gorilla, but it was the size of a chimpanzee. Curious, he later purchased a picture from a nearby hunter that seemed to depict a large chimpanzee, which added to the mystery. Then he found footprints that were at least as large as those of a gorilla and excrement that was 3 times larger than that of normal chimpanzee droppings. Though he returned in 2000 to an area that had already been scouted years earlier with a group of international researchers, his curiosity would not be satiated. Additionally, despite not seeing any chimpanzees, the team did discover multiple gorilla-made ground nests in the marshy riverbeds. When he assembled an international team in 2001, which included well-known scientists Mike Bellevue and George Schaller, the search then became far more intense. Sadly, after the Second Congo War ended and field research in the country became more practical, he recruited Shelley Williams, an experimental psychologist with connections to National Geographic, who had claimed to be the first scientist to see the infamous billy apes.
Okay, sees me now. Beautiful. Sees me now. It's not really flaying.
Despite this, the expedition was unable to find any apes, Williams then returned with footage that appeared to have been taken by one of the photographer's trackers, and she described an amazing encounter in which she said she could hear them in the trees before they abruptly charged through the brush towards her. She said that they weren't making any noise to frighten, as one might anticipate from a fictitious charge. They were massive, silent, and obviously going in for the kill, but they stopped and disappeared as soon as they saw her face. Williams had picked up knowledge from the locals, who identified 2 species of great apes. There were hunters with easy targets for poison arrows, and there were tree beaters who scampered up trees to avoid danger. Subsequently, there existed the more massive and somber lion killers that hardly ever scaled trees and appeared impervious to lethal darts. Williams claimed to have seen 3 different chimpanzee species during her summer expedition. The distinct characteristics exhibited by these apes, including the new and enigmatic kind, didn't fall into any recognized category of previously recognized ones. At the absolute least, they represented a distinct and isolated chimp culture, according to her suggestions that they might be entirely new species, a special subspecies of chimpanzees, or even a hybrid between gorillas and chimpanzees. Williams would have a falling out with the group following that, which was unlike any previous study, and despite the setback, 2004 saw her make the commitment to carry out her research on her own. Dr. Thurston Cleveland Hicks, a primatologist from the University of Warsaw in Poland, was brought in to carry out the study. He has spent more than 10 years documenting the special group of chimpanzees that reside there. According to Hicks, apes weren't even a distinct subspecies of humans genetically. He claimed that chimpanzee DNA and hair samples from nests would prove the animals had been part of the pre-existing species. Williams disputed these results, claiming that the samples might have been tainted or that the use of human-derived genetic markers rendered the results unfit for primate research. The apes did not act aggressively. Williams was severely injured in an accident in 2005, which rendered her paralyzed. She decided against going on the next expedition, and in 2006, Hicks and his group carried out another search. After spending 20 hours observing the chimps, Hicks reported that the apes lacked, Hicks added, noting that the females exhibited typical chimpanzee sexual swellings and behaviors like pant-hooting and tree drum communication. He also claimed that media reports had misrepresented his findings. The appearance Williams initially compared the billy apes' appearance to that of a long-extinct species, and resembling giant chimpanzees. In contrast to gorillas, which only turn gray on their backs as they age, apes appear to turn gray early in life. She observed that both males and females gray uniformly, with wide muzzles and brow ridges that run straight across and overhang. No matter how old they were, one billy's skull had a gorilla-like sagittal crest and a noticeable forehead ridge. However, other measurements more closely resembled those of chimpanzees, and this crest was unique to one of the numerous skulls discovered, so it wasn't thought to be typical for the population. The female billies also had genital swellings, just like other chimps. She also made some fascinating observations about their behavior, contradicting Williams's earlier claims, stating that the apes had howled at the moon. But Hicks and others had denied that Hicks had observed that the apes behaved more like gorillas than like chimpanzees in certain situations. For example, in 2004, Hicks observed a group of these apes from roads and villages. They constructed ground nests using interwoven branches and saplings that were bent into a central bowl, much like a gorilla does. Noting that the chimps would approach people and encircle them with a strong sense of curiosity, the chimps would approach and gaze at each other, silently walking away without displaying any signs of hostility or fear. This behavior was fascinating because the chimpanzees did not exhibit the same level of aggression as male gorillas, who always charge when they come across a hunter. Hicks had explained that within a 12-mile radius of roads, apes almost always fled from humans, especially the adults who showed the most fear. However, the farther they were away from the roads, the less fearful they were of human contact and the more naive they were. Hicks delves further. Hicks has consistently maintained that these chimpanzees have evolved distinct traditions and customs. They are renowned for inventing unique instruments to seize insects and crack open termite mounds. This area is home to a sizable chimpanzee population and is one of the last unspoiled wilderness stretches left. Though there had been tales of remarkable billy apes for years, it wasn't until recently that a group under the direction of primatologist Cleve Hicks was able to make their way through thick jungle and crocodile-infested waters to conduct extensive research on them. Hicks and his group covered a huge area covering 50,000 square kilometers, with over 2,000 kilometers of forest surveys. It is estimated that these chimpanzees could number in the thousands or even tens of thousands and live on both sides of the river. The population's distinct habitat, which included savanna woodlands on one side of the river and dense forest on the other, provided the ideal setting for research into the potential effects of various ecological settings on animal behavior. There were many obstacles to overcome in order to get to this isolated location, such as the risk of malaria and the perils of armed conflict. Hicks was adamant about researching and recording these chimps' lives in spite of these challenges. His first researcher to spend enough time with these elusive great apes to fully understand their way of life was Hicks, with the invaluable assistance of local experts. Among the most fascinating findings is that chimpanzees use a range of tools to collect insects and honey. These instruments were not selected at random. The chimpanzees used them carefully and chose them carefully. For example, the chimpanzees used in contrast to other groups and in contrast to other chimpanzees, they used substrates to break through termite mounds and obtain food. Nonetheless, termites can be found throughout tropical Africa. The majority of chimpanzee groups ignore them. It's interesting to note that some termite mounds, which are favored by other chimpanzee populations, are completely ignored by the billies, which includes the Gombe chimpanzees Jane Goodall saw, even though these termites are typically enjoyed in other places. The billy apes do not serve them. Researchers find this dietary choice to be perplexing. What makes these chimps reject a food source that others find so desirable that they have made tools to harvest it? According to Cleve Hicks, the concept of culture may hold the key to the solution. In this sense, culture refers to socially transmitted behaviors within a group. According to Cleve Hicks, the chimpanzees might have turned the tables on their predators, which could account for their apparent fearlessness when it comes to ground nesting, even though the theory is intriguing. To delve deeper into the phenomenon, it also raises a number of new questions that require answers. He's working with PhD candidate Tony Romani from the University of Warsaw, and together they're broadening their research on ground nesting practices among these chimps and other populations throughout a large region, as well as their cultural habits over distance. These chimpanzees share similar cultural habits despite inhabiting diverse habitats over a large geographic area. Each one constructs a ground nest. They disregard the widely preferred Macrotermus termites in favor of dipping for ants and breaking open termite mounds. According to Cleve Hicks, this uniformity might result from the chimp populations south and north of the river not having had enough time to establish their own unique traditions and customs. Furthermore, being eradicated by the swift development caused by human activity. Despite the numerous behavioral parallels between the two sides of the river, Hicks observed some interesting differences, such as the preference for honey and the use of very long sticks by chimps north of the river appear less interested in the ants and prefer to focus on ponderan ants, which they catch with a shorter stick and do not appear to be eating honey. One possible explanation for the observed differences in the depth of the driver ant holes is that there is a significant difference between them, which may justify the use of the long stick. However, this explanation does not explain why the chimps on either side of the river choose a different ant, nor why chimps in other regions use much shorter sticks for the driver ants as well. The chimps may be driven to seek out salty ants due to a lack of salt in the region. Additionally, the absence of red colobus monkeys, which are common in the south and serve as a preferred prey in areas where both species coexist, may also force the chimps in the north to look for alternative sources of protein. However, by 2006, the study moved to more dense forests about 50 to 55 kilometers from the road to Billy. The discovery of gold in the area in 2007 caused an influx of new arrivals. Civil war and neglect have left the region undeveloped and wild, with locals still using homemade guns of ancient design. Because of the growing disturbance, researchers were forced to relocate their studies south of the river. As a result, by 2000, given that many of them keep them as pets, it appears that not even city officials and police are aware that they are protected species. Hicks emphasized that immediate action is required to stop any more losses, thinking that formal protection of important chimpanzee populations and their habitats is as chimpanzees can be, or how dangerous they can be, until we start working together to protect them. What do you think of these unusual chimps? Let me know in the comments below, and also be sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you never miss another great video like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.